The Secret Teachings of All Ages, by Manly P. Hall, brought to you by the Masonic Audiobook Library, The Life and Teachings of Thoth Hermes Trismegistus. Thunder rolled, lightning flashed, the veil of the temple was rent from top to bottom. The venerable initiator, in his robes of blue and gold, slowly raised his jeweled wand and pointed with it into the darkness revealed by the tearing of the silken curtain. Behold the light of Egypt. The candidate, in his plain white robe, gazed into the utter blackness framed by the two great lotus-headed columns between which the veil had hung. As he watched, a luminous haze distributed itself throughout the atmosphere until the air was a mass of shining particles. The face of the neophyte was illumined by the soft glow as he scanned the shimmering cloud for some tangible object. The initiator spoke again. "This light which ye behold is the secret luminance of the mysteries. Whence it comes none knoweth, save the Master of the Light, behold him." Suddenly through the gleaming mist a figure appeared, surrounded by a flickering greenish sheen. The initiator lowered his wand and, bowing his head, placed one hand edgewise against his breast in humble salutation. The neophyte stepped back in awe, partly blinded by the glory of the revealed figure. Gaining courage, the youth gazed again at the Divine One. The form before him was considerably larger than that of a mortal man. The body seemed partly transparent, so that the heart and brain could be seen pulsating and radiant. As the candidate watched, the heart changed into an ibis and the brain into a flashing emerald. In its hand this mysterious being bore a winged rod, entwined with serpents. The aged initiator, raising his wand, cried out in a loud voice, "All hail thee, Thoth Hermes, thrice greatest! All hail thee, Prince of Men! All hail thee who standeth upon the head of Typhon!" At the same instant, a lurid writhing dragon appeared, a hideous monster, part serpent, part crocodile, and part hog. From its mouth and nostrils poured sheets of flame, and horrible sounds echoed through the vaulted chambers. Suddenly, Hermes struck the advancing reptile with the serpent wound staff, and with snarling cry the dragon fell over upon its side, while the flames about it slowly died away. Hermes placed his foot upon the skull of the vanquished Typhon. The next instant, with a blaze of unbearable glory that sent the neophyte staggering backward against a pillar, the immortal Hermes, followed by streamers of greenish mist, passed through the chamber and faded into nothingness. Suppositions concerning the identity of Hermes. Iamblichus averred that Hermes was the author of 20,000 books. Manetho increased the number to more than 36,000. See James Gardner. Figures which make it evident that a solitary individual, even though he be overshadowed by divine prerogative, could scarcely have accomplished such a monumental labor. Among the arts and sciences which it is affirmed Hermes revealed to mankind were medicine, chemistry, law, arc, astrology, music, rhetoric, magic, philosophy, geography, mathematics, especially geometry, anatomy, and oratory. Orpheus was similarly acclaimed by the Greeks. In his Biographia Antiqua, Francis Barrett says of Hermes, "If God ever appeared in man, he appeared in him, as is evident both from his books and his Pymander, in which works he has communicated the sum of the abyss and the divine knowledge to all posterity, by which he has demonstrated himself to have been not only an inspired divine, but also a deep philosopher, obtaining his wisdom from God and heavenly things, and not from man." His transcendent learning caused Hermes to be identified with many of the early sages and prophets. In his ancient mythology, Bryant writes, "I have mentioned that Cadmus was the same as the Egyptian Thoth, and it is manifest from his being Hermes and from the invention of letters being attributed to him." In the chapter on the theory of Pythagorean mathematics will be found the table of the original Cadmean letters. Investigators believe that it was Hermes who was known to the Jews as Enoch, called by Kenealy the second messenger of God. Hermes was accepted into the mythology of the Greeks, later becoming the Mercury of the Latins. He was revered through the form of the planet Mercury, because this body is nearest to the sun. Hermes of all creatures was nearest to God, and became known as the messenger of the gods. In the Egyptian drawings of him, Thoth carries a waxen writing tablet, and serves as the recorder during the weighing of the souls of the dead, in the judgment hall of Osiris, a ritual of great significance. Hermes is of first importance to Masonic scholars because he was the author of the Masonic initiatory rituals, which were borrowed from the mysteries established by Hermes. Nearly all of the Masonic symbols are Hermetic in character. Pythagoras studied mathematics with the Egyptians, and from them gained his knowledge of the symbolic geometric solids. Hermes is also revered for his reformation of the calendar system. He increased the year from 360 to 365 days, thus establishing a precedent which still prevails. The appellation thrice greatest was given to Hermes because he was considered the greatest of all philosophers, the greatest of all priests, and the greatest of all kings. It is worthy of note that the last poem of America's beloved poet, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, was a lyric ode to Hermes. See Chambers' Encyclopedia, The Mutilated Hermetic Fragments. On the subject of the Hermetic books, James Campbell Brown, in his History of Chemistry, has written, "Leaving the Chaldean and earliest Egyptian periods, of which we have remains but no record, and from which no names of either chemists or philosophers have come down to us, we now approach the historic period, when books were written, not at first upon parchment or paper, but upon papyrus." A series of early Egyptian books is attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, who may have been a real savant, or may be a personification of a long succession of writers. He is identified by some with the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian Thoth or Tuti, who was the moon god, and is represented in ancient paintings as ibis-headed with the disk and crescent of the moon. The Egyptians regarded him as the god of wisdom, letters, and the recording of time. It is in consequence of the great respect entertained for Hermes by the old alchemists that chemical writings were called hermetic, and that the phrase hermetically sealed is still in use to designate the closing of a glass vessel by fusion, after the manner of chemical manipulators. We find the same root in the Hermetic medicines of Paracelsus and the Hermetic Freemasonry of the Middle Ages. Among the fragmentary writings believed to have come from the stylus of Hermes are two famous works. The first is the Emerald Table, and the second is the Divine Pymander, or, as it is more commonly called, the Shepherd of Men, a discussion of which follows. One outstanding point in connection with Hermes is that he was one of the few philosopher-priests of pagandom upon whom the early Christians did not vent their spleen. Some church fathers went so far as to declare that Hermes exhibited many symptoms of intelligence, and that if he had only been born in a more enlightened age so that he might have benefited by their instructions, he would have been a really great man. In his Stramata, Clement of Alexandria, one of the few chroniclers of pagan lore whose writings have been preserved to this age, gives practically all the information that is known concerning the original 42 books of Hermes and the importance with which these books were regarded by both the temporal and spiritual powers of Egypt. Clement describes one of their ceremonial processions as follows. For the Egyptians pursue a philosophy of their own. This is principally shown by their sacred ceremonial, for first advances the singer, bearing some one of the symbols of music. For they say that he must learn two of the books of Hermes, the one of which contains the hymns of the gods, the second the regulations for the king's life. And after the singer advances the astrologer, with a horologe in his hand, and a palm, the symbols of astrology. He must have the astrological books of Hermes, which are 4 in number, always in his mouth. Of these one is about the order of the fixed stars that are visible, and another about the conjunctions and luminous appearances of the sun and moon, and the rest respecting their risings. Next in order advances the sacred scribe, with wings on his head and in his hand a book and rule, in which were writing ink and the reed, with which they write. And he must be acquainted with what are called hieroglyphics, and know about cosmography and geography, the position of the sun and moon, and about the 5 planets. Also the description of Egypt, and the chart of the Nile, and the description of the equipment of the priests and of the place consecrated to them, and about the measures and the things in use in the sacred rites. Then the stole-keeper follows those previously mentioned, with the cubit of justice and the cup for libations. He is acquainted with all points called paidutic, relating to training, and mashophaltic, sacrificial. There are also 10 books which relate to the honor paid by them to their gods and containing the Egyptian worship, as that relating to sacrifices, first fruits, hymns, prayers, processions, festivals, and the like. And behind all walks the prophet, with the water vase carried openly in his arms, who is followed by those who carry the issue of loaves. He, as being the governor of the temple, learns the 10 books called hieratic, and they contain all about the laws and the gods and the whole of the training of the priests. For the prophet is among the Egyptians also over the distribution of the revenues. There are then 42 books of Hermes indispensably necessary, of which the 36 containing the whole philosophy of the Egyptians are learned by the forementioned personages, and the other 6, which are medical, by the Pastopheroi, image-bearers, treating of the structure of the body and of disease and instruments and medicines, and about the eyes, and the last about women. One of the greatest tragedies of the philosophic world was the loss of nearly all of the 42 books of Hermes mentioned in the foregoing. These books disappeared during the burning of Alexandria, for the Romans, and later the Christians, realized that until these books were eliminated, they could never bring the Egyptians into subjection. The volumes which escaped the fire were buried in the desert, and their location is now known to only a few initiates of the secret schools. The Book of Thoth. While Hermes still walked the earth with men, he entrusted to his chosen successors the sacred Book of Thoth. This work contained the secret processes by which the regeneration of humanity was to be accomplished, and also served as the key to his other writings. Nothing definite is known concerning the contents of the Book of Thoth, other than that its pages were covered with strange hieroglyphic figures and symbols, which gave to those acquainted with their use unlimited power over the spirits of the air and the subterranean divinities. When certain areas of the brain are stimulated by the secret processes of the mysteries, the consciousness of man is extended, and he is permitted to behold the immortals and enter into the presence of the superior gods. The Book of Thoth described the method whereby this stimulation was accomplished. In truth, therefore, it was the key to immortality. According to legend, the Book of Thoth was kept in a golden box in the inner sanctuary of the temple. There was but one key, and this was in the possession of the Master of the Mysteries, the highest initiate of the Hermetic Arcanum. He alone knew what was written in the secret book. The Book of Thoth was lost to the ancient world with the decay of the mysteries, but its faithful initiates carried it sealed in the sacred casket into another land. The book is still in existence and continues to lead the disciples of this age into the presence of the immortals. No other information can be given to the world concerning it now, but the apostolic succession from the first Hierophant initiated by Hermes himself remains unbroken to this day, and those who are peculiarly fitted to serve the immortals may discover this priceless document if they will search sincerely and tirelessly for it. It has been asserted that the Book of Thoth is, in reality, the mysterious tarot of the Bohemians, a strange emblematic book of 78 leaves which has been in possession of the gypsies since the time when they were driven from their ancient temple, the Serapeum. According to the secret histories, the gypsies were originally Egyptian priests. There are now in the world several secret schools privileged to initiate candidates into the mysteries, but in nearly every instance they lighted their altar fires from the flaming torch of Hermes in his Book of Thoth revealed to all mankind the one way, and for ages the wise of every nation and every faith have reached immortality by the way established by Hermes in the midst of the darkness for the redemption of humankind. Poimandres, the vision of Hermes, the divine Pymander of Hermes, Mercurius Trismegistus, is one of the earliest of the Hermetic writings now extant. While probably not in its original form, having been remodeled during the first centuries of the Christian era and incorrectly translated since, this work undoubtedly contains many of the original concepts of the Hermetic cultus. The divine Pymander consists of 17 fragmentary writings gathered together and put forth as one work. The second book of the divine Pymander, called Poimandres, or the Vision, is believed to describe the method by which the divine wisdom was first revealed to Hermes. It was after Hermes had received this revelation that he began his ministry, teaching to all who would listen the secrets of the invisible universe as they had been unfolded to him. The Vision is the most famous of all the Hermetic fragments and contains an exposition of Hermetic cosmogony and the secret sciences of the Egyptians regarding the culture and unfoldment of the human soul. For some time it was erroneously called the Genesis of Enoch, but that mistake has now been rectified.
Thank you for joining us. If you have not subscribed to our channel yet, do well to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell to follow the light.